The weekly message of the United Church of Christ of Hummelstown, Pennsylvania, a podcast version of our worship service. To learn more and listen to the rest of the worship, check us out online at hummelstownucc.org.
In the lectionary, this story of the foretelling of little baby Isaac is meant in some ways to tell us that anything is possible, that God can work miracles out of the improbable and seemingly impossible, which is probably why we hear both the lead up to the story as well as the conclusion in 1 week, though certainly the goal as well is to set up the next 2 weeks' rather dramatic turn of events for this ancient family. But in centering Sarah's main contribution to the arc of the story here, there's a lot we lose in her character depth that's important for understanding this moment of laughter for her. So to better understand this reaction, we would do best to dig a little deeper into the underlying experiences, connections, even triggers here. Sarah is laughing, I think, in part because she has heard all of this before. It's not that this is the first time this promise has been said. She must have heard it from her husband at least a few times. And here more men are telling her of the impossible. This moment in the story comes following some important familial changes. Abram has been told this promise by God several times. And he doubts God more than once in the making of this promise. So certainly there is a history of doubt in the family that does not fall entirely on Sarah, who laughs in her doubt. Abram says to God, "My servant is my heir." Following that, Sarai takes matters into her own hands and offers the companionship of her servant to Abram, who conceives Ishmael. And we'll return to that dynamic of the interconnected story next week. But then God reminds Abram that his wife, not the mother of his child Hagar, is meant to be the mother of the promise. So God doubles down and initiates Abram's entire family and household, including firstborn son Ishmael, into the promise by requiring all the men and boys to be circumcised. To all those men and boys, now maybe the promise is a little more real. In return, Abram and Sarai receive a name change to Abraham and Sarah. And it is directly on the heels of this recovenanting with very physical stakes that these strangers appear. God among them, God recognized as present by Abraham. So quite possibly part of Sarah's laughter is a recognition that this will be her turn to have a physical stake in this covenant with God. This is a promise that has turned and continues to turn her life upside down at every turn. She has traveled and settled and set up camp, and then traveled and settled and set up camp again, over and over again. She has had her husband marry her off to the Egyptian Pharaoh, who in turn paid him handsomely when the truth was uncovered. She has waited and sought to make her own way toward the promise, and here it is being said again. Abraham once again told that this promise is real. How many times? How many times does he need to hear it before everyone around him, everyone involved in their life's path, can live into this future statement of promise? Apparently, this one last time. The moment that Sarah is present and is addressed directly. What the text doesn't say was if anyone laughed along with her as Sarah laughed. Who knows, maybe even those strangers laughed with her as God calls her out for her response. Writer Ashley Wilcox has written that God is outside the tent, Sarah is inside the tent, and Abraham is in the space between. This threshold is significant. It signifies the space between people and God. Sarah and Abraham are in a space between what they have been and what they will be. They are in a threshold moment, a moment that is too fleeting for our lectionary creators, who move us immediately from this threshold toward and into the projected birth. But they are in a threshold. We must see it that way. They are about to dive into this promised life after so many assurances. And with this one more, the hold of the threshold releases. And the torrent of promise comes finally hurtling towards this family system. So laughter seems like a pretty appropriate response in that moment. Doubt, expectation, relief, fear, all of these responses could have brought on Sarah's laughter in this threshold moment. Into this moment of transition, each member of the family responds out of what they know to make sense of their world. The need to serve, the need for honesty, the desire to make sense of life. When the story begins, Abraham is the one that recognizes God immediately and offers a simple, humble space to the travelers, which they accept. Yet he is instantly outdoing this simplicity he offers. He offers water and bits of bread. Not even water to drink. He offers them water to wash their feet and a bit of bread. Yet turns immediately to Sarah and tells her to make 3 cakes and continue to prepare a bigger and bigger feast. From the offering of bread and water, we are told instead of someone who will slaughter an entire calf for just 3 people's meal. And he continues on with that full spread with the curds and the milk. It's a hefty meal of hospitality, rather than the meager portion of respect he offered. And none of this Sarah questions or laughs at, we might note. She doesn't say to him, "Why? They're just travelers." No. This is a common practice for their family. The generosity they prepare as a welcome for guests must not have been uncommon for their lives. This is possible. This Sarah understands. The caring for others in all situations, even when unexpected, it is possible. There's nothing extraordinary then in this hospitality, at least for this family. Personally, I'm a little surprised at the exuberance of their caring for others, and is the thing that I take note of most often when I read this story. It's a reminder that hospitality, when done correctly, feels authentic and appropriate to the situation. Real hospitality lifts the needs and desires of the guest, stated or unstated, though these needs may be. Hospitality meets the need with kindness and simple effort. It isn't always about offering the same thing to each person. It isn't about getting noticed for our efforts. Hospitality should be something offered with a warmth of inner peace and personal joy in the offering, not in the receiving. And while we can clearly learn that it means what it means to offer hospitality from the heart from this scene, we also learn how to accept being a guest too. Because this is the other side of hospitality, receiving the gifts of others. And these strangers, these parts of God that walk up to the tent that day, do so with an acceptance of exactly where and with whom they are pausing on their journey. They accept the offer of Abraham, yet also accept when he goes above the offer with a rather generous flair thrown in. Acceptance, responsiveness, gratitude. These are traits of being a good guest, knowing that the offer to host is as important to relationship building as the acceptance of entering that hosted space. These divine strangers accept the offered food and rest, and in return, they invite Sarah into this promise. They offer their blessings of goodwill on the family. They know and respect the role of being a guest as the host accepts the responsibility of holding that space. When someone comes into your house, do you expect them to vacuum floors or do dishes? Sometimes we do. Sometimes we don't. It probably depends on the relationship you have with them prior to their visit and how long they'll stay. But the position of hosting implies that you know your own boundaries enough to state them when needed. And that is what both Abraham and Sarah offer to the world in this moment, the knowledge of their boundaries. Sarah knows her life, her reality. And so in her laughter, she makes room for a change in those boundaries. She makes space for a new kind of guest in her family, in her body. She laughs out of self-protection, out of recognition. She laughs to make herself ready. And God recognizes her in that space. God calls her out on her laughter as a means of saying, I see you. I know you. As I have been here for Abraham, I will be here for you too. This is the God who says to her, why did she laugh? The God that knows her, who enjoys her spirit, who is grateful for her constant presence with her husband on this journey, and who knows her laughter. A God in whom all things are revealed. So this week we ask, are we ready to be a guest? Are we ready to be a host? Both are necessary for this world. Or are you just waiting in the wings for your part to play, laughing inside the tent? After worship today, we have the chance to tell the world our truths, to invite others into the hospitality that is this family of faith too. So I do hope that you'll join me in sharing that invitation widely, in reminding our town that love is found within and outside of these walls, that God can do the unexpected, that God will be with us even when we laugh in fear and in doubt. God, who is the love, the connectional web of this world, joins us to Sarah, to Abraham, to these divine guests, these parts of God embodied in life. God is love on the journey. Amen.
This has been the weekly worship from the United Church of Christ of Hummelstown. No matter who you are, or where you are, on life's journey, you are welcome here. Join us online or in person, at 104 East Main Street in Hummelstown, Sundays at 10:30 a.m. Thank you for listening today. We look forward to your fellowship.